happened here. Offline. All right. To streamline. Excellent. Okay, my encoder is not showing me on. All right. Hey, Roxby, give me a sound test. Can you hear me? Testing 1, 2, 3. OBS. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Mic check. Let's see. Check, check. Both. Check, check. Check, check, check. Checking mic. Check, check, yes. We have micage. Okay. Alrighty. Sounds good. There's an echo now. Yes. Yes. Fixed. Just had to. Okay, it's gone. Good. Gone. Good. Excellent. Okay. Okay, I'm going to start the intro. And we'll get going from there. Designs banner. We may be starting just a few seconds early here. My screen doesn't seem to be changing, which it should be. I'm going to refresh this real quick and hope this works. Okay. And there we are. Okay. Sometimes my computer kind of gets stuck. I'll let you know what's going on. And all right. Thank you, Roxby. My wife is away at the Messianic Roundtable tonight, and I'm actually giving people my apologies to come and do this. But I thought, if she runs into anyone, she could just tell them that Jeff's doing a thing on Jewish objections to Paul. And if they object to that, then I'll just add their objections to other Jewish objections to Paul. It'll just be Jewish objections to Paul for believers while missing the roundtable because you're doing a lesson on Jewish objections to Paul by Jewish non-believers. And so that's kind of where things are at. So she's usually my sound check people, but I got some people there like Rebecca and Roxby who are filling in, and they're doing the sound check for me. I'm also going to get us started here with a post on Facebook for the Facebook crowd. I'm going live on Facebook now. There we go. Start live video. Hopefully that will work for you. You're going to see the weird sort of thing occasionally. I hope some people come on. I've been advertising. This is exciting. This is going to be more than one-time series, and so I'm really excited about it. Oh, there is an echo. Let me check my sound settings again. Usually that's if it says both monitor, monitor off. So, I could play with the mic levels a little here and see if I'm in the red zone, but I don't want to go down too far down there. Any other word? I'll look for any more comments. I've dropped the sound down a little, and I've checked so that monitor isn't playing at the same time. Now, you Facebook folks won't know quite what I'm talking about because you're not getting feed the same way that the YouTubers are getting feed. Again, the YouTubers get the PowerPoints, but I can still put them up. And if I see people tuning in that want the PowerPoints, I will be more than happy to honor that and get them the PowerPoints. And I've worked out a way where I can even put the sound clips in with the PowerPoints and make them available so you can get the whole thing if you're on Facebook. But I got the loyal folks that are following me on YouTube who I'm so excited about, and I've started to be able to contact. I think Rebecca now, I don't hear an echo. Good. Okay. Yeah, you can pop that. Now, I'm going to say what vocab says. If you're on Facebook, find the like. If you're on YouTube, click the like. Pass the link out. And let people know about this because I want to grow it. Also, Rebecca gets the kudos. She ended up suggesting this title. That doesn't mean I'm not interested in what you think, Roxby. I'm very interested in titles after this series. And I'm interested in the sort of apologetics things that you would be interested in hearing from me. And given my perspective, that'll be a little unusual. In fact, you're going to hear part of a role I played via my perspective in view of the recent debate with David Wood and Muhammad Hijab. So, yeah, I want to hear from you. I want to know what you're interested in. YouTubers, you are welcome to pipe in and come up with suggestions. And I will be glad to respond to those. So I'm really kind of excited. All right, Roxby. All right. I'm excited about this topic because this is near and dear to my heart. So this one's really got me excited because there's some material I'm even going to be able to pull for my dissertation. So this is really sort of exciting to me. Let me give you a little update, though, because I had a wonderful time with vocab, my man Malone, doing something this week I didn't know I'd be doing. So I'm clicking that, and you're going to see the thing up now. Now, I think, Roxby, you were on the feed with vocab after the debate when he did his special, and so you know all about this. Rebecca, I don't know if you do or not, but there was a debate between David Wood who is brilliant, and Muhammad Hijab, and I may be mispronouncing it, but I almost feel like mispronouncing his name. He was not very nice. Um, and so I got to be in on that, and it was a blast. And I got to respond to some of what I call playing the Jew card, where he pulled out objections to the Trinity that are really used uh, in the Jewish community against the gospel. And he pulled some of the same ones. Uh, Man, it was like, that's why I say called playing the Jew card, because he really pulled like from the playbook in Brooklyn, New York. And so it was a blast to be on and be part of that. I was not expecting that vocab got on with me, and I was like, we were doing this tweet thing that I'd never heard of. And so I got on with him, and he suggested, hey, what do you think about doing an after broadcast? And that was like at 8 at night, and I was like, yeah, we'll go for it. That thing went like it for an hour and a half. And we had a great crew, and I got to know a few folks a little better, and so it was a blast. This is just another way, but we're going to see how things kind of fit in. And so that's part of what I've been up to, and then a few other things. So I just kind of wanted to let you know about that. I have a resource section at the end, but let's dig into tonight's episode. I have to go to slideshow because this is a cool thing from the beginning. And it'll pull the slideshow up, and there you are. Let me transition here. There you go. There will be a few second delay because I'm actually pulling the graphics from the slideshow, but that's okay. And there's our first slide, and I'm going to show you where we're going as far as the series. But we're not going to get through everything. It's kind of fun because this is like a several section series here. So let me change this, okay? And this was the thing that I think it was Rebecca had posted this morning. And it's going to take a second here, but you can see that. Now, the guy in the picture is not the one making the quote. But the quote is really kind of important. And I hope you can see that well enough. I'm going to try to make it bigger, but I got to kind of be careful here. Okay. And I'm kind of looking at it too. But he talks about Paulinian theology and how no one could assume anything except the fact that Paulinian theology is anti-Jewish. And the reason I picked this up is because the church makes statements like this, but the Jewish community looks at Paul as an apostate. And so it's kind of funny, from the Jewish community, they're sort of agreeing that Paulinian theology is not in sync with Judaism and is anti-Jewish, and looking at Paul as an apostate. And then there are parts of the church that raise the same exact objection, which is really crazy. And so this is going to be good from both sides, because you're going to be able to get a better idea and understanding of what Paul understood in his day and age from the Judaism that existed at the time. And you're going to get kind of an overview of how that fits. You're going to get to learn a little bit about dealing with Jewish objections. And hopefully you're going to get a good background Bible-wise at the same time. But I just thought it was ironic that he was using, from the church side, some of the same sort of terminology that you get from the Jewish side. So I'm clicking to the next slide here. Okay? And it'll take a second or two to come up. You're going to see those Jewish objections listed. And so as that comes up, there they are. I'm kind of paying attention to what you folks see too. Now, if you're on the Facebook, you're not seeing these slides, which is okay. I will get them to you. I want the Facebook folks too. But there is no way right now that I have the capability of pulling the Facebook and the YouTube at the same time. It's sort of like owning a library book. It just can't be shown at the same time. And you also miss the real sort of joy of being able to get the resources. So that's a little disappointing too. But I can put up a thing like a bibliography Um, let's look at these objections, though, okay? Paul abrogated the Torah. We're going to talk about what Torah is, but that's one of the biggest Jewish objections. In fact, we'll be dealing with Torah, Messiah in the sense of salvation, and God, which is the title of Dr. Goldberg's book, essentially. Torah, God, and Messiah. Because those are sort of the normative Jewish categories. See, Jewish people think in slightly different categories. Now, there's biblical information's there, but how it's organized as far as Jewish thought is a little different. And so we're going to be looking at those three objections, but we're not going to be looking at them all tonight. So, we're going to start with Paul and the law. We may get all the way through, so that part 1 may be a little deceiving. But I don't think we will. I think we'll get about halfway through. Okay? So let's talk about what Torah is. Okay? Now, again, there'll be a little slow switch there. But I think it's a misunderstanding in the church. And I got to teach this material as far as my dissertation as part of this material as part of my dissertation project to some pastors. So we need to talk about this term Torah. Now, when you see Torah, think law, because that's what the church calls it, is the law. But that's partially where the misunderstanding is. And so, hopefully you're still kind of following here. My stream health looks a little peaked. So I'm hoping we're not having problems here, because we were doing so well. But the internet here is subject to the whims of Arizona. Okay, so let's talk about this misconceptions, and let's talk a little bit about this. The word Torah doesn't mean law. Namas is the Greek. And that's what you're seeing in your New Testament. Now, not every place that namas is used does it necessarily mean law. We have to be a little careful there, too. Context is very important. Okay. I'm just looking at the comments here. The guy was Jewish. Seriously. Rebecca's telling me that the guy was Jewish in terms of the picture. Possibly. Okay. Torah means instruction. It comes from the Hebrew verb to throw, like you're throwing information out there. It's God's instructions to Israel. It's often translated law, but that's somewhat problematic because Jewish people don't think of the Torah as a law book. But that's what you're going to see most times, and that's because the Bible was translated from Hebrew to Greek. Now, that's real good for us in a lot of ways, but sometimes it can work against things. And so that's why you have it. See, the word namas gives it, as the quote points out here, it kind of creates a stronger legal connotation than Torah does. But namas was used during the Hellenistic period for divinely revealed precepts and ideas that transcended specific legal context. So law, even if you put it back in its Hellenistic context, is not all there is to it. It's kind of funny. All right. Hey, RC, you can join us if you want to. We're on tonight, and I'd love to see you on there. The New Revised Standard Version is inconsistent in how it translates Torah, unless otherwise noted in biblical passages. The New Revised Standard renders the word law teaching or instruction. You have this translation thing going on. But what you need to understand is Jewish people never understood the Torah as a mere legal code. And that's what you really need to get out of this whole thing, is that the Jewish people don't view it that way. And so the church tends to think, when it thinks of the 5 books of Moses as just a legal code, and it tends to change the thinking a little bit here. And so that's what I want to be really clear about, is that the church needs to I've said it before, and I said it in my dissertation, the church needs a theology of Torah. But it needs a sound theology of Torah. And even in the Messianic movement, I don't necessarily see all the time a sound theology of Torah. Now, they would disagree with me, uh, and I don't go screaming down the halls at the round table that I disagree with some parts of what people consider to be their theology of the Torah, but I don't think it's developed the way it should have to the extent that it should have. Okay? And so we're going to keep moving along here. Okay? It does refer to the 5 books of Moses, but think about this from your Sunday school for just a second here. How many of the Bible stories, if you grew up in the church, were you told that came from the 5 books of Moses? Noah the ark, the creation story, the Exodus. That's all narrative, and yet it's part of the Torah. So even in the back of your head, there's the possibility to understand that it's not all just legal code. But it is the 5 books of Moses. Now, Jewish people can talk about the Torah being the whole Bible, too, because the part can represent the whole, and there's a name for that. But in its strictest sense, in most formal sense, when Jewish people talk about Torah, they're talking about the 5 books of Moses. And I just pulled this out. Again, you see the references. Okay? And I pulled out John Fisher, who's probably at the round table right now enjoying dinner, and he makes the same point I did. Okay? Here's how he makes it. Therefore, Torah should not be viewed as a legal code. In fact, the word means instruction. Legal codes existed in Moses' day and could have served as the pattern for the biblical texts. But the explicit covenant formulation of Exodus and Deuteronomy stands as strong direct evidence that this is a treaty or covenant, not a law code. Now, John is making an important point here. Exodus and Deuteronomy. Oh, thank you. Rebecca's giving me clarification. The guy was complaining about Christians being anti-Semitic. Okay, but it's not Paul's fault, as we're going to see tonight. Paul didn't invent a new religion in the sense of trying to just be L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology and come up with a new religion. It wasn't out just to start his own little thing and sell books. That's my point there. Okay? What you need to understand is that Exodus and Deuteronomy are set up, particularly Deuteronomy, like a Hittite treaty. So this is all covenant, which is a really strong idea in Jewish thought. And it's the key idea in Jewish thought as far as how this works. When we talk about salvation, whether Paul advocating salvation by faith is somehow anti what the Jews had received before. Okay. Rox B asked a really good question. What is the difference between covenant and a legal code? The willingness of both parties. I'm going to take that question because I did use a term there. I would say marriage is a covenant, but I don't know that I'd call it a legal code. And it's more than the willingness of both parties. In a legal code, both parties aren't, I don't necessarily get anything if I don't speed. In a covenant, think of a covenant more in terms of a contract. A contract isn't a legal code, although it contains guidelines and responsibilities for both parties. So a covenant is the idea of a formal arrangement between two parties, whereas a legal code is just a list of rules. So in a covenant, both parties have responsibilities. Now, there's different types of covenant, but that's part of the difference. In a covenant, there is a relationship in which both parties have a part to play. In a legal code, there's a list of rules one party may have to follow, but there isn't necessarily a relationship in which both parties have a responsibility. Now, in an unconditional covenant, God makes his fulfillment of his self-accepted responsibilities. Notice how I said that, because God doesn't have to do anything. He's sovereign. But self-accepted responsibilities in an unconditional covenant, God sets himself responsible, makes himself responsible for fulfilling his responsibilities, regardless of whether the other party perfectly fulfills theirs. So I'm going to let that stand there. But that's a great question, Roxby. I hope I helped you with it. A legal code is just a list of rules. A covenant is an arrangement between two parties in which both parties have responsibilities. And there's, and that should kind of help there. Okay? And Jews thought very much in terms of this is the document of God's unique covenant with us as Israel. So I agree with John Fisher, who has done some really good work, and this is out of the Enduring Paradox. There's some places where I kind of go, I'm not quite there. I don't totally agree with some things. And his view on the new covenant, I'm kind of like, I don't think that's all there is to it, and I think it's a little. It doesn't go quite where it should go. Okay, let's talk about Paul and the Torah. Now, this gets really important. Thank you for Roxby for letting me know that that was helpful. This gets real important. Paul continued as a Torah-honoring Jew. Now, I use the word Torah-honoring there. And that itself, and some people in the Messianic movement would say, well, what does that mean, as opposed to Torah keeping? But let's look at the quote. This is out of the scriptures here. It should be up there. I'm hoping you're seeing it better, but I'm going to read it to you. If you need to pull out your Bible, and please do, or pull out your cell phone. I'm all for that. We're in Acts 23, 6 through 9. When Paul perceived that part were Sadducees and the other Pharisees, he cried out in the council. We're talking about the Sanhedrin here. Men and brethren, I am a Pharisee, the son of a Pharisee. Concerning the hope and resurrection of the dead, I'm being judged. And when he had said this, a dissension rose between the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and the assembly was divided. For the Sadducees said there was no resurrection, or angel, or spirit. The Pharisees confessed both. And there arose a large outcry, and the scribes of the Pharisees' parties arose and protested, we find no evil in this man, but if a spirit or angel has spoken to him, let us not fight against God. Now that's interesting. Paul doesn't claim to be a Sadducee, but here's the thing. In the Greek, ego, eimi, and I think it's pharisaios or pharisaion because it's accusative, and I don't have it in front of me. The important thing is eimi is present, active, indicative in the Greek. That means not I was a Pharisee, but I am a Pharisee presently. Okay? And what's interesting is this is after his conversion. So Paul did not consider his faith in Messiah making him being different, or being opposed to is a better word, being a Torah-honoring Jew. That is important. Okay? The first followers of Jesus were all observant Jews. This is important for dealing with Jewish objections, because the Jewish objection is Paul abrogated Torah. He went apostate. He dishonored Torah. He dishonored the 5 books of Moses. And he founded a new religion. And that's not what's going on here. And that's terribly important for us to note. We're going to see where this becomes important with the Trinity, because we have a Torah-honoring Jew here. And see, that has some ramifications as far as Paul's view of God. But we're not there yet. Let's go to Acts 13, 13 through 15. Paphos. From Paphos, Paul and his companions sailed to Perga in Pamphylia, where John left them to return to Jerusalem from Perga. And they went to Pisidian Antioch, and on the Sabbath they entered the synagogue and sat down. And after the reading from the law and the prophets, the synagogue rulers sent word to them, saying, Brother, if you have a message of encouragement for the people, please speak. So Paul's being asked to speak at the synagogue, where he normally and regularly, as his habit, goes. By the way, somebody in the comments with that photo pointed out that Paul was indeed a Jew. And even Martin Lane Craig made a comment related to some other issue that Paul was a practicing Jew. See, the difference is, we're going to see that there are differences, but just understand here, Paul isn't abrogating Torah. It's his unique understanding of Torah in connection with Messiah that we're going to see revealed. That's going to make so much of a difference. Okay? And Dr. Michael Brown, in his Jewish Objections, New Testament Objections, Volume 4, says, obviously, Paul and his companions were outwardly identifiable as Jews. Or why else would word be sent to them that if they have a message of encouragement for the people, they should speak it? Otherwise, they would not have been recognized as Jews, let alone invited to speak. And so the point is, they were fully recognized by the community. Now, we had to get that out of the way, because the accusation is Paul is some sort of renegade who abrogated Torah. And the first point against that is Paul continued to be a Torah-honoring Jew, so that doesn't really make any sense. Now again, we're going to see what Paul's theology is, but we have to determine, or we have to state what it is not. So, we've done that. Paul believed the 5 books of Moses were good. For we know the law is spiritual, but I am carnal, sold under sin. That's Romans 7:14. Now that's important. Did God give good scripture? Yes, he did. Now this is where trouble almost happened in the debate. Because if you were tuned in to Muhammad Hijab and David Wood, Muhammad Hijab, during the Q&A period, this is a Muslim polemicist in case you're tuning in, asked David Wood to explain parts of the scriptures that appear bad. If you want more information, I didn't put it in my resource, but I can stick it in my resource for next week. Paul Copan's Is God a Moral Monster? And it has to do with the nature of God in the Old Testament. And Hijab wanted to nail him. And David said, and he really was walking a fine tightrope here. He said, and I don't have the clip, he said something about things not being ideal in the Old Testament. Okay? And you're right. The proper answer to that is God is speaking to real people in real time and space where they're at, and in a fallen world and the world surrounding the Israelites at the time, there were extremely cruel and unacceptable practices going on, which were contrary to the way God designed man, and he dealt with the people where they were at. So things were not ideal, but God's law was still good. I hope you caught that, because that's almost like worth the price of admission. Okay? The law is spiritual. We will spend some time with the second part of this, but understand, Paul is not out to repudiate the 5 books of Moses. Okay? Paul is not a renegade who doesn't identify with the Jewish people anymore and identify himself with the faith of his forefathers. Okay? And he does not believe the 5 books of Moses are bad. Okay? And by the way, we skew God's character. Okay? If God gave us an evil instruction, what would that say about our God? And so, yes, there are things in the Bible where God is working with people where they're at and they're not where he wants them to be, but that doesn't mean that his instruction's bad. It means the world around is bad and people have a problem too, which is where the second part of that verse comes in. And that's why I expanded on it. See, Paul understood the law was good. People were not good. We were intrinsically flawed. We had what we call sin, sequential internal non-morality. If you want an acronym for sin, that's kind of fun. I've used that as an analogy with people, that we have internal, sequential non-morality, which is like a virus that has corrupted us internally, and so we do not function the way we should function. Okay? Paul understood the law was good, people are not. He was not out to repudiate the 5 books of Moses. He was not a renegade. Let's look at this together. What then? Are they better? Are we better than they? Not at all, for we have previously charged both Jews and Greeks that they are.
You guys are inside. I don't know why you're not picking up the phone. But I'm in the driveway. Do you want to have somebody
Okay. I can't do that right. That's my daughter. So anyway, oh, there we go. There's one viewer.
Monday, 7.
Sorry about that.
PM 60248282849.
Hey, you guys are inside. I don't know why you're not picking up the phone.
Because I'm.
The machine is off.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I had to kind of take care of that. So anyway, human beings are not good. That doesn't mean there isn't some good there. We're made in the image of God, but it's corrupted. Okay? So we've got that sequential internal non-morality. Paul understood, and this is very important, that no one could ever be saved through Torah. And that's terribly important that Paul understood that no one could ever be saved through Torah. This is Galatians. Now we're going to talk about method of salvation, what Judaism understood at the time as far as salvation. But let's just look at Paul right now, knowing that a man is not justified by the works of the Torah, but by faith in Jesus Christ. Even we have believed in Jesus Christ, that we might be justified by faith in Christ and not by the works of the law. For by the works of the law, no flesh shall be justified. Now, for those who are on Shield Squad or involved with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, I mean, that's a key verse. You can never be justified through Torah. Torah is good. People are corrupted. You can never be justified through Torah. And Paul understood that. That was a key part of the theology that Paul understood. Okay? Now, Michael Brown handles this really interestingly, and I want you to hear his words. We're going to talk about him. Paul takes this up further and explains that as a consequence of the law's holiness and people's sinfulness, the law produced wrath and judgment since it revealed sin rather than enabled obedience. For Paul, that is why Messiah came into the world, to satisfy the law's demands and enable us to fulfill the righteous requirements of the law. And that process begins with us being justified by faith, which Paul finds as a fundamental Torah truth. Now, what Dr. Brown is saying is that justification that Paul understands that Torah never could save is part of Torah. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to go back to this quote because he's using Habakkuk 2:4 and Genesis 15:6. And so it's very important as we talk about the method of salvation, we're going to see that Paul understood from Torah the method of salvation, and that Torah could never bring salvation. Okay? Now let's talk a little bit about one of the functions of the Torah that's really important for us to understand. Okay? Paul saw within Torah functions which ended with Messiah. Now the Messianic movement needs to understand this. Some functions of Torah do not continue. They could not continue once Messiah came. And it was good to see Dr. Brown go ahead and point this out. Okay? The Torah as a guardian. We're going to talk about this. Now, this is some stuff. Some of this stuff really kind of borders on stuff that I'm talking about in my dissertation. Okay? Now, again, Dr. Michael Brown's very clear. The charge is Paul is the renegade who repudiates Torah. Okay? And so he starts with this. Paul did not have a negative attitude towards the commandments or even towards the Torah. The Torah only had a determined task to guard. That's Galatians 3:23, and protect the people under the law until the Messianic era. In its post-Messianic era, the Messianic law holds sway, and the time of the guardian is past. That is really important. We're going to talk about how Torah can change, but this is key in my mind. The Messianic movement needs to understand that there is a Messianic Torah and that it has authority. And the time of the guardian is past. The truth of salvation history also appears in the interpretation of the Elijah tradition, with reference to which Pastor Joseph Klossner said, 2,000 years of Torah and 2,000 years of the days of Messiah, meaning naturally that in the days of Messiah, the laws and commandments lose their significance. Now, he's quoting a Jewish source there who's a Jewish scholar, okay? And the point is, we're going to see that there was an expectation of changes in Torah when Messiah came. But here's the important thing. We're going to get to it. What do I mean by guardian? The law had the purpose as a guardian. The word Paul uses is the word pedagogos. Okay? And this was a very unique role in Greek society. And it says that the law was a pedagogos to bring us to Messiah. Now, some versions say tutor, but that's not totally adequate. I actually pulled this from Michael Smith. The role of the pedagogue in Galatians, Bibliotheca Sacra, 164, page 207. It was one of the things that I accessed for my dissertation. Okay, a pedagogos was an adult that a child was put under charge of. Think of like Mary Poppins, okay? Kind of a Mary Poppins character, but not quite. And the pedagogos was what the child was put under charge. And the pedagogos was to keep the child out of trouble, help with the child's moral training, and make sure that he received his academic or went to where he needed to go to receive his academic training. Kind of like an adult who supervises the child and makes sure they get on the school bus and they get to school and they learn what they're supposed to learn. And it was a very unique role in Greek society, but it was temporary. Once the child became of legal age, the pedagogos no longer had authority over that child. And Paul's pulling out this exact language here for a very important point. That the guardianship of the law was temporary. And the law had a function as the guardian for the people of Israel until the time of Messiah, to keep them safe and to protect them from the moral whims of their own nature and the moral trouble for which they would have destroyed themselves with if there had not been a pedagogos. So it was a supervisory and protective role that was temporary. So, what did we pull from tonight? And then we'll start getting to our resources. We pulled that Paul was not a renegade who repudiated his identity with the Jewish people. He was not against Torah. He believed that Torah was good, but people were not good. The Torah could not save, although it contained the information necessary to understand the mechanism or the way that people would be saved. Okay? So contain the information, but keeping Torah itself could never save. The law was a guardian to keep the children of Israel protected until the time of Messiah, and then that role as guardian ceased. Now that's what Paul understood. Now we got so far. Next week, we're going to look at the fact that Paul believed that the Torah was uniquely given to Israel and that the nations had moral guidance outside of the Torah. That's going to give us the other side of this. Okay? And then we're going to move from there into, does Paul teach a method of salvation? We sort of already know the answer. But is that method of salvation perfectly consistent with the Torah? By the way, that's terribly important, because if the Torah, which the Muslims say is inspired, teaches salvation by faith, and we understand what we mean by faith, we're going to go ahead and get rid of the charge by Muslims and also the charge against Paul that he was against against the law, or antinomial, that he believed they could be saved apart from the necessity of any sort of, I got to be careful how I put this. He believed in faith without works. That's antinomialism, essentially. And that's a charge Muslims make against Paul, and it's a charge that Jewish people make in terms of Paul teaching a different method of salvation. So we're going to end up looking at that next week. And then we'll move from there, and we'll move towards looking at Paul's understanding of salvation and his understanding of God. So hopefully this was very helpful to you. And let me move on, because I've got my resources section here, and we don't want to forget that. So I'm pulling that up there and transitioning it for you. There's one of our resources. Remember, I talked about this paper. It'll be appearing, Bibliosacra Tech. If you have access to an academic library or a theological library, you can get a hold of this. This was like a dissertation paper, so it's a little harder to get a hold of. It's not really in hardback. But there are ways. I think Google Scholar might be possible, and that might work. And then I'm going to hold up another resource. I'm going to go to my camera here. Okay, I'm going to transition this. Okay, and I'm going to make this bigger because I want you all to see this book. Okay, there we go. This is Answering Jewish Objections by Dr. Michael Brown, Volume 4. He's got 5 volumes. These are an incredible resource. You probably can't collect all volumes at once. So if you have a choice of volumes, really cool, because he deals with the Trinity too. Theological Objections. I'm just pulling this out of my library here. Okay. Messianic Prophecy Objections is 3. Okay. And let's see what we got here. Theological Objections is Volume 2. If you can't afford all of these, actually I can show the Facebook folks these. You might want to start with the theological folks objections, and then move to the Messianic Prophecy ones, and then go 4, which is New Testament, or you could go 1 and 4. Roxby is asking me a cool question. Would you say that James kind of clarified what Paul taught, saying that faith without works is dead? So we do works because we have faith, not to gain it. I have looked at those two as flip sides of the same thing. The only thing I would say is that James is writing earlier, and the emphasis, from Hebrews to James is kind of interesting. You are clarifying where we're going to end up going, but we're going to establish that justification by faith is established by Torah, not contrary to it, and look at that. And then we're going to talk about covenant nomism. How did Israel understand salvation? And it wasn't just individual salvation in connection with doing works. It was a little more complicated than that. So Roxby, I think you're onto something. But I think there's a lot of juicy stuff there. So that's kind of where we're going there. Click the like buttons. Get the things out. Encourage folks, because this is a good topic. This is good stuff. and they'll understand how Jews in Paul's time period understood salvation, and then how the 5 books of Moses support justification by faith. I'm telling you, with like the black Hebrew Israelites, these are going to be great verses, and we can deal with the counters. But I think there's some really good stuff here. And I think that we can pull that out. And then when we get into Paul's view of God in the Trinity and plurality in the Godhead, this is stuff I even got to use after the debate with David Wood and Muhammad Hijab. So I think that all be cool stuff. I am so thrilled for the faithful folks. I'm thrilled for the person who clicked on to subscribe to the channel. I hope he joins us sometime in the near future, because I'd love to see him on here. We didn't get a lot of Facebook folks. I have that one. Oh, good. You have one of the Dr. Browns, I think Rebecca's telling me. They're expensive to have the whole set. I started with theological objections and messianic objections to prophecy. Information related to the Trinity. Oh, you volume 4. Okay. Well, all of it's good. He has probably done the best job of anyone. Oh, you have volume 4. That's interesting. So you started with New Testament objections. That's interesting. Really, really cool stuff. And so he has done a job. Oh no, sound cut out and got fuzzy. Sorry about that. We are coming to, oh good. We are coming to pulling a lot of internet. So I will be back. Get more folks, click folks, put links up. I'm so thrilled for the folks that are here, but I think we could get a lot of information to a lot of people, and I'm excited about doing that. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to sign off for tonight. Until next time, this is Zion's Banner. Shalom, shalom, and I'll post some stuff to folks who didn't follow us, because stuff will still be up on the YouTube. And someday I'll be able to get the YouTube titles to match a little bit better. But thank you so much, Roxby and Rebecca, for hanging in there and being faithful. I really appreciate it. And let's see if we can grow our audience. Topics. Go ahead. Be thinking about. Be praying about it. Because God can speak to you through you to me and help me to continue to move forward. And I don't always, know what would be really great. And it challenges me, by the way, to do research as you guys come up with stuff and say, hey, there's a bunch of topics that would really be cool to grab. That's even better for me, and I love it. So hang in there, and I will see you next week by the grace of God. Until next time, shalom, shalom.